Mr. Mayor, we're now live.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see everybody again.
Good morning.
Due to the COVID-19 emergency declaration, this special meeting of Ajax Council is being held electronically and live streamed on the town website. All members of council in attendance are participating by audio and video teleconference, and town staff are available throughout the meeting if council members have any questions on the agenda. For members of the public watching from home, please bear with us if we encounter any technical difficulties throughout the meeting. I'll now call this meeting to order. And Councillor Lee, can you please go ahead with the land acknowledgement?
I will. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is situated within the traditional treaty territory of the Mississaugas. More specifically, the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, signatories of the Gunshot Treaty of the 1788 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. This land is and will continue to be home to the Indigenous peoples. Let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past through authenticity and support truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate Indigenous communities by being leaders of action in acknowledging the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations towards truth and reconciliation. Let us keep these principles close as we continue towards truth and reconciliation and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does any member of council have any pecuniary interest on matters this morning? Seeing a lot of shaking heads. No, we're good. Moving along to departmental reports. I spoke with the director just before the meeting. There is no presentation, so we'll just open it right up to questions. This came up a few weeks ago, just one sec, Councilor Tyler Moore, and I see you there. This came up a few weeks ago and was something that was just going to be done. And I felt it was important that this come to council and council have the opportunity to make this decision, because this will commit one of our spaces for a couple of years. And it's a space that we were looking at before for innovation technology in the village, our innovation village idea that was basically been slowed down by COVID and some other things. And so, yeah, I just wanted to bring it here. So ask your questions, please. And we'll go from there. Councilor Tyler Moore, and you are first. And I see Councilor Lee as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Don Terry, Manager of Economic Development, for your report on this and all the inner workings. And it sounds like an exciting endeavor. Always nice to fill spaces that we have, occupancy in. So can you speak within your report? There's a few things just quickly. Can you speak a little bit on the small retail component that you state in your, what does that look like, a small retail component? Please.
Is that Mr. Terry or Mr. Romanowski can answer that?
I could take that through the chair to Councillor Tyler Moore. And I mean, this is a component that definitely would be considered, maybe in the second or third year of the operations. It may not be something right away. What would it look like? Probably similar to like the Brock Street Brewery. They have that little bottle shop component just off of Brock Street there. It's kind of like a 10 by 12 space that might just have things for sale that they produce on there. It's by no means a sit down type of venue. It's kind of come in and grab what you like and go.
I could jump in if I could jump in as well. Yeah, I mean, their orders are all basically made online right now online and are all delivered. And they expect to continue to make those deliveries, but people will have the option if they choose, and the deliveries are free, but people will have the option if they choose to drop by the location, pick up what they've ordered online and take it away. Just to reiterate what Mr. Romanowski has said, there will be no sales of product for consumption on the site.
Okay, that's good. And it also says that the businesses, the proprietor, who I'm very happy to hear lives in Pickering Village, that's great, said that they would maybe, I don't know if I remember that before, a business going door to door just to say hello and welcome themselves to the neighborhood and let them know, educate. So they said they would be doing that. I didn't know if I don't want to turn it into a Q&A, with residents. So they're saying that they're thinking of doing that. I'm just thinking, how would that look if they were going to the door? If you answered the door and somebody was there from the distillery, you know, I guess they would just say hi and hand them information. Maybe not the greatest question, but I just have to picture a business sort of soliciting their presence.
Yeah, it's really basically, I believe they're exploring going to the nearest houses. So there's a couple of homes that are across the street. There's one to the south side of them. And then after that, there's not really residents that are very close by. So I imagine what they would do is knock on the door, introduce themselves, let them know that they, you know, they've applied for a liquor license and they are planning to open up at that site. Address up front some of the issues that you might have, so that there's no noise, there's no odors, there'll be no alcohol sold for consumption on site. They are limiting the hours of operation for the retail outlet, so there won't be a lot of additional traffic in the neighborhood as a result of that. So they'd like to just knock on those doors closest. They want to be good neighbors. So they, and then they would invite them to an open house at a later date.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate for those of you watching and not necessarily have the agenda, the lease is for 3 years, correct? With a 3-year extension with 9 months notice from them. And they're paying full market value, or fair market value for rental of the property, correct?
Correct.
So we're not necessarily doing them cutting them a deal, so to speak. We're not giving anyone kind of preferential treatment. We're treating them, we would treat the same any tenant. Is that correct?
Correct. That's
correct.
Through the
Yeah.
chair.
That's I just want to say, just as a comment, I think it's a fantastic initiative that the town's doing. I think this is what, the mayor has often spoken of, our passion for economic development. This is really a good way to kind of create our own quasi incubator, so to speak, to kind of get these businesses going. I know I'm asking you to look into your crystal ball a bit. What is the long-term goal for the town for these kind of projects? Do you see, Mr. Terry, us expanding this to other properties the town has?
Yeah, through the chair, at the mayor's request, we're currently working on a review of town-owned facilities to determine if there are others that are being unused or underutilized, so that we could consider expanding a similar program to those locations, or identifying those locations as part of a potential innovation hub or innovation initiative going forward.
That is great. And just finally, should they want to re-up for another 3 years with 9 months notice, would a report back to council just explain that they are going to re-up, or would this just be kind of a memo to us?
I think through the chair to Councillor Lee, I think if we've communicated this way off the hop, it would only be appropriate to come back and inform council through these channels.
Great. And then I just more of a comment then. I hope we're kind of studying the effects of partnering with these businesses to see success, what worked, what didn't work, so that we're able to create a more robust program to down the line for economic development. I think it's a great idea to use these underused facilities and to help businesses. It's a win-win across the board. But I want to make sure, and I'm sure all of council agrees, we want to make sure we're doing it properly so that there's a long-term sustainable model that's built into this. So thank you all for your work on this, and no further questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councillor Khan is next. And I saw you, Councillor Bauer, as well.
Okay,
and now dies.
Okay, thanks. Chair, is this something we have to vote on today?
Yes, we do have a motion. Mr. Clerk, could you put up the motion, please?
So no, sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun. I just asked because the recommendation is that the CAO be authorized to negotiate a lease agreement with the Durham Distilleries, right? And then at number 6, the conclusion says that we will be getting, what was it? $108,000 plus HST, which equates to about $3,000 a month. So what is this saying? We're here to vote that the CEO do have a negotiation with the Durham Distilleries, but the conclusion says that there's already a figure here. So should I take it for for
Yeah,
granted.
there's
It's
no
already
there's
been-
no negotiation. The lease has been established. It was ready to be signed a month or so ago. It would have been signed had I not asked that it come to this meeting for council discussion, because I had a concern, two things. One, Mr. Terry's spoken about the report that's coming on town buildings, and I wanted to see the use, because I get a lot of calls from a lot of people looking for space and having great ideas and different innovative type things. And Don and I have been working on trying to, if we can facilitate some of these things, especially during COVID in some of our buildings. And we did have some planning issues before that we were able to sort out, because planning, the zoning did not permit us to do some of these things, but that has all been done. But before we commit one of the buildings that we had been talking about for Innovation Village for 3, potentially 6 years, I wanted to make sure council had the opportunity. So we're having those questions answers today, so everybody's on the same page, and this will require council approval. Even though it didn't really need council approval, I wanted it to have council approval. So the lease
Mr.
is
Mayor.
done, it's ready to sign. Yes?
Mr. Mayor, yes, Mr. Mayor, if I can, just for clarity,
ahead,
this is Shane Baker, CAO. So when the report came forward to me, I had a discussion with the director of planning, and it seemed there were a few things that, so when the lease that we thought was all tied up went to the department heads for review, the department heads had a few questions and wanted to see if the potential leaseor would be willing to adjust the lease in a couple of different ways. And so therefore, when I spoke with Jeff, there were some questions on both sides. So I felt that we needed to change the resolutions to what you see them as they are today, because I don't think it's fair to say to council that this is totally tied up in a nice bow yet. I need to get to the table with this group just to make sure that what is being presented to you today is actually, and what has been negotiated up to this point is still acceptable on both sides. So to, that kind of answers Regional Councillor Lee's question that it's not totally a done deal yet. That's why I'm asking for authorization to enter into negotiations or to finalize negotiations. And the same to Councillor Khan, the amount that has been discussed to date between staff and the potential leaseor equates to about $108,000 for the initial term of the lease. However, there are some issues related to potential property tax or other things that may be triggered with this kind of an arrangement. We're not sure if that's the case yet, but I need to get to the bottom of it. Once all that is done, and once I think that we have an acceptable lease that we can enter into, remembering that the reason why we're doing this is to, nurture new business in the spirit of, Innovation Village. I will report back to council either through correspondence, probably through correspondence, because we need to get this thing done so that council is fully aware as to what the final lease agreement contains.
Thank you. If the word finalize was in be authorized to finalize the negotiation, then I wouldn't have wasted your time with this question, but thank you very much. Well answered.
Shane, sorry, before I move on to Councillor Bauer, because when we first started this conversation, I was on the impression it was ready to go. What are some of the things that staff have now thought needed changing? Can you give an example of something?
Well, I will let Diane speak to one of the things that came up with the potential issue regarding property tax on the site. So that is something that we need to look into. I'm not sure if it's something that would actually be triggered, but we need to get to the bottom of that.
Ms. Valentin?
So currently, as a town-owned facility, the property is exempt from taxes. However, if we lease the entire building out, it's our responsibility to provide that information to MPAC, and MPAC could assess it and present it as a commercial property, which will be then taxable. So that's still something that we're investigating. But at this point, because it's a town-owned facility, it is exempt from property taxes. But if it is fully commercial, if it's recognized by MPAC as a fully commercial lease, it could incur property taxes.
Okay. Thank you. That answer your question, Councillor Khan? Okay, Councillor Bauer is next.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this report. Very exciting opportunity. Many of my questions have been asked already, but and I know there was a small sentence in the report, but the distillery is not planning to make major changes to this building, are they, in order to be a distillery?
No, through the chair to Councillor Bauer. No, internal alterations really is all the work that's going to happen for them to install their equipment, etc. No exterior alterations are required, so they're not improving the outside of the building or updating the facade. There might be the erection of a sign, whether on the front of the property or on the building itself, but that will be done all through the appropriate building permits and requirements that the town would need in order to have that in place.
Great. Okay, thank you. And that would be exactly the way that any other business would be treated, correct?
Well, they would be treated with whatever, through the chair, whatever they would require in order to operate their business. So if this was a business that didn't require any improvements to the building, then they wouldn't need to get a building permit, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there's some basic requirements, but yes, the building is from the outside will not look any different other than maybe some signage.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to make a comment. The social good of the Durham Distillery, just a shout out that they are donating $5 per bottle of their strawberry gin for Durham College bursaries, and $2 from their Wheat King vodka is donated toward brain cancer research. So I think that's wonderful. My other questions have been asked and answered. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Dias is next.
Thank you very much. Just a quick question, and I guess my concern is around, it's a very different kind of business in a neighborhood. And I want to ensure that the correct information goes out to the neighborhood prior to the sign going up and misinformation going out, because there may be some concerns. So I'm wondering if communications is going to do some work on this, discussing about what the benefits are from this, why we're doing it, and basically to ensure people, you know, there's not going to be an increased traffic, there's not going to be smells or noise or people drinking on site, that kind of thing. I think it's really important that we communicate about this initiative. It's a great idea. It's using a facility that we're not using, and we're helping with this small business become established. And I think it's really important that the community gets the right information. Not everybody will be here online this morning, but they will hear about it. So is communications going to do any kind of promotion on this, or?
Sure. Through the chair, we would plan to work with communications, potentially set up an IMO page. Also, the distillery is required to apply for a liquor license. And with that, that means that information letters are delivered to every property within a kilometer of the location. And also advertisement is taken out in the Ajax News Advertiser. So I think it will be well communicated. And again, the distillery recognizes that they really want to be a good neighbor. They want to be a part of our community and part of that community. And with Mr. Ferg living in the neighborhood, that is even more important to him on a personal level. So I think I can assure you, Councillor Dias, that it will be well communicated in advance.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because we all know how difficult it is to correct incorrect information. So thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question would be, Don, is there, to your knowledge, have you seen any of these types of industries in neighborhoods like this? Like, it's kind of barely in the neighborhood. It's just kind of on the cusp of the neighborhood with probably 4 or 5 homes around it. I'm just curious if we've ever seen any of that in Durham region?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of any in Durham region. Certainly in the city of Toronto, there would be numerous examples of this type of thing, and restaurants that are, squeezed in between two residential houses. So I can't think off the top of my head, sorry, of any through the chair that exist in Durham.
Yeah,
I mean, through the chair to Councillor Crawford, I mean, the town brewery in Whitby, I mean, there's residential houses, right? It's a whole residential street right across the street from it. So that's kind of a situation there. I guess Falcon in a way with the rear lots along Westney Road, although you're separated by a little bit of a higher order road. Yeah, and I would agree with Don, you go into the city and these are kind of all over the places and kind of remnant old buildings that may have been used for other purposes that are in the middle of residential areas. So I wouldn't say it's out of character. It's definitely kind of on the fringes of kind of residential into kind of our Highway 2 type of uses. So that's part of the review and the analysis that planning went through when we were considering looking at the zoning and our ways to maneuver through that those provisions.
It seems to me, thank you very much. It seems to me that when you have one of these types of industries, it starts to attract others. And I think as a way of sort of pumping life into our village, I think it could be a really good thing. I mean, this is not a bar. Maybe some of the residents would be disappointed about that. But I think that it's a way of, again, it creates that economic viability in the village. I think it would be awesome to see some of those kind of pop up in our village too. I love the idea that our fire hall is being used and not being torn down through really no fault of the previous tenant. They ended up with a Durham-wide strike and then a pandemic. So they really barely got themselves started and kind of the world shut it down. So I'm really looking forward to the success of this. I'm just curious, with our previous tenant, why wouldn't we have been giving or issuing property taxes at that point? I mean, it was ideally going to be an industry. What's the difference, or can we talk about the difference, and why would this be subject to property tax, and was the other one subject to property tax? And is that something that we can talk about? I don't know.
I think it was because it was just a short-term sort of infill type project, but I'll let staff answer if there's anything further than that.
I guess we didn't know that at the time though, right? We didn't know that at the time?
I think it was always a temporary thing where this is a fixed longer term lease, but Ms. Valentin, can you clarify that, please?
I'm not entirely sure of what property Regional Councillor Crawford is referring to.
The Mill Street, we had via our what's that virtual reality?
Ice VR.
Mr. Mayor, I can address this if required. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it was Ice VR as a virtual reality operation. It was a very temporary thing that was going on in that facility. They actually weren't under a lease agreement. It was more under kind of a, room booking type of agreement, similar to like renting out the HMS Ajax room or something to that effect. And it was definitely before Director Valentin's time coming back to the municipality when that information was all put together for that particular property. But that's long since expired, and that's why Ice VR is not there, and this space is now available. But definitely, this would be the proper way to go about things when these spaces come available, entering into these proper lease agreements of some sort. And as well, just to echo what you said, that this could be a catalyst or kind of a jumping off point for other things within the village. It's definitely a good starting point for staff in dealing with these types of agreements and council being part of these discussions early on, so that if spaces through the review of our facilities do come available or we do identify things, then this council and staff kind of are already on the same page with the types of things that would be discussed or part of that discussion. Don, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything else to that. Can't see on my screen.
I think you've covered that off very well through the chair. Just to Councillor Crawford, I wanted to just as an example, I think you're bang on. If you look at the town of Whitby, they now have probably 4 or 5 craft breweries. And the reason for that is that, you know, in this case, Durham Distillery will be the first business of its nature in Durham region. They are likely to undertake an apprentice distiller, similar to that's how Chris Ferg has learned his craft. At some point, that apprentice distiller will choose to go off on their own. These folks like to be in close proximity to each other because they continue to work together and support one another in their craft. So I do think it's quite likely that we could see a little bit of a hub around this industry established in Pickering Village, which would be fantastic.
And I love the idea that it's, sorry, Diane, I just love the idea that it's, that this is already a resident of Pickering Village. So there's a lot of knowledge of what the village expects. And so I think there would be a lot of care in entering into the village with this kind of business. And so any help that we can be to help residents, perhaps questions or anything, where Rob and I are always willing to run out there and talk to residents. So if we can be of any help, let us know. Sorry, Diane.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Valentin, you said you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to confirm what Jeff was saying, if it was just a space that was rented from the town, then that does not have any impact on property taxes. But if it's a long-term lease, this is categorized differently. So that would be the distinction.
Thank you very much.
Okay, further? My only concern now that I know about the property tax angle is, you know, we're giving them a market rent, and now if you add property tax onto that, will that scare them away? I don't know.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think, and that what I wanted to accomplish today with bringing this report forward with the recommendations that are in the report was to get a feel for what council would like to see done with this building. And I, you know, the senior management team understands that, especially coming out of, you know, the pandemic, there's an excellent opportunity here to nurture a small business, to get them up on their feet. Their intent is, once they are up on their feet, that they will then, you know, go into a larger building somewhere in the Ajax. If that's the intent, if in our view, this isn't about being a moneymaker. We absolutely don't want this to be borne by the taxpayers. They need to pay for this, but I think that there's a deal to be had here where the municipality will still have a revenue that will come in from this building while we still can nurture this business and get it up on its feet. But that's why we have recommendation number 1 there, because I need to sit down with them and see if we can work that out. And I will get back to council and let you know how that goes.
Thank you. I'll just let council know I had a really good hour and a bit long meeting with Samuel yesterday, who's our new Don. Will be taking over for Don, Manager of Economic Development. And I stressed to him, we had quite a long talk about Pickering Village and the need to kind of jumpstart that, and how can we attract more businesses and things like craft breweries and that type of thing to the village, so make it more of a destination and sort of get that going. So he's well aware and was very receptive to that, and I think this is the type of thing that will really help. So I'm glad to see some movement here, and great questions. So Mr. Clerk, we do have a resolution. I need a mover and a seconder for the resolution that's going to come up. Well, I'll read it. The chief, well, it's the same as number 1 and 2 that is in the recommendations. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Crawford. 1 sec. And seconded by Councillor Tyler. No, I didn't see a hand for a seconder. Councillor Khan. That the CAO be authorized to negotiate and the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute lease agreement with Durham Distillery. Anything further on the resolution? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Those in favor? I see all hands. That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to the next item. So let me pull up. We have a number of items for discussion, and then if we should choose to do something after the fact, we can bring forward. The first one I've asked for is an update on the automatic speed enforcement. I had a couple of councilors reach out to me. Councillor Crawford, you were one of them as far as to where are the speed boards. And so Mr. Grieve is here to answer any questions on that. John, do you have a quick presentation or are you just?
I don't, I can give a very quick verbal kind of update as to where we are and then happy to answer any questions that council would have.
Okay, please go ahead and then I'll open the floor to council on the automatic speed enforcement program.
Great, thank you. So yes, so since staff received the direction to move ahead in June, we have been busy getting ready and getting the various steps set in motion for the implementation of automated speed enforcement. We did receive delivery of the 12 radar message boards. We have since installed 8 of them. So 8 have been installed over the last few days. The remaining 4 will be installed as soon as we get locates. So those 4 are being placed on new poles. So we need locates to ensure that there's no underground infrastructure in the way before those can be installed, but they should be installed in relative short order. Town staff also collected data or recent data on all 12 zones in order to set up our schedule. So we've identified a proposed schedule for the first year of the program, rotating the 3 cameras approximately every 8 weeks. So that's our intent. Then in the back end, we've also been working with the 3 groups that we are required to sign agreements for or sign agreements with. Redflex, which is the equipment provider, the City of Toronto, who operates the Joint Processing Center, which reviews the images and lays the charges, and then MTO, which grants us access to the vehicle registration database. So we have draft agreements from all 3 and actually are meeting internally tomorrow to go over them and proceed or push forward toward executing those agreements. We have an internal meeting with communications staff for next week where we will advance our communications plan related to this program. We will be developing an entire web page that will sit within ajax.ca, develop a number of communication materials that will be used both on town social media and also be made available to councillors should they want. We're looking at doing an information session that will be done prior to launch to give residents more information on what the program is and its intents. And then we're also talking about the idea, obviously pending COVID, restrictions or realities where we are, of a launch event of some sort where we could involve members of council. In the next few weeks, you will see the regulatory signage go up at the first 3 locations. That's required by regulation to be posted 90 days in advance of deployment of the cameras. We will then be preparing a fulsome report and update for council at the November GGC, where you'll get all of this information, all of the communications plans, the full schedule will give you our intended rotation. And really right now, we are working toward a go live date or turn on camera date of the 2nd or 3rd week of December. So that's our plan right now. And we do believe we have everything in place to meet that deadline. And as I said, the work back, the key point is those regulatory signs to go up in the next 2 to 3 weeks and start that 90-day warning period. So yeah, that's my my quick update. Happy to answer any questions of council.
Okay.
And
thank you,
just
John.
to add to that, Mayor Collier and council, I mean, in addition to all that stuff, John also conducted all the interviews and the ASE contract positions in place as part of that as well. And that was instrumental in getting a lot of this work done with the boards and the locates and coordinating all those efforts too.
Before I open up the floor, I just want to know, have the camera systems been ordered?
They are secured with the provider. So the provider is aware we require 3 units. They have those units kind of set aside for us. And it's once that agreement with them is executed, they then go into the process of deploying them. So they are accounted for, and it's really a matter of executing that agreement.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not going to, go put in the order and be told, oh, it's a year wait now, or something like that.
No, we've been.
Councillor Croft, sorry?
No, I've been in discussions with them, and they are, as I said, they've set them aside.
Okay, Councillor Crawford.
I apologize if I missed this. The speed boards, when are they going up?
So 8 of the 12 have been installed. So there are 8. So we have 12 community safety zones. We've actually identified 15 locations where the cameras will go. So there are 3 zones, Delaney, McGill Carrison, and Thackeray Williamson, which have 2 camera locations within them. So we have a total of 15 camera locations. At each camera location is where a board will also be placed, so we can do the data collection. And so 8 are in the field right now, and the remaining 4 are waiting locates. And then we are in the process of ordering the extra 3, which then will be placed in the field as well. But we've placed them in the order of the schedule, so that the locations that will see the camera first are the ones that have the boards already.
Do you have offhand the locations of the 8 now?
Yes, I do. So the 8 that have been placed are on Delaney Drive between Church and Ravenscroft, on McGill between Westney and Coles, on Williamson between Warner and Audley, on Ashbury between Shoal Point and Audley, on Carrison between Old Harwood and Harwood, on Thackeray between Williamson and Salem, and then on Bircher between Bailey and Emperor. And then I off the top of my head, I'm not sure if it's the last one is either Williamson Drive between Thackeray and Salem, or Seeger between Williamson and Rosslyn. That 8th one, I off the top of my head, I do not remember.
John, through the chair, did you mention Finley? There's one on Finley now too, just between.
Oh, okay.
There's one at Finley between Banner
and Parks.
Banner and Brooks Bank, right by the little Duffins Trail Greenway that comes out there to go over to Lakeside Public School.
So Councillor Crawford and members of council, I'm happy to, following this meeting, I will send you all an update of all of the 15 locations that we've identified and which ones have the signs. So I will do that as a follow-up to this, just to make sure you all have the most up-to-date information.
Thank you.
I realize that I batter you with emails regularly. I apologize for that. But that's kind of my job. You were mentioning about having a website inside the town's website, correct? In that, I know that the Vision Zero through the region actually lists where the cameras are going to be. Is that our intent, to be able to do that also, so that when people, if they're curious, they can go in and take a look at where the cameras will be placed?
Through the chair to Mayor, Councillor Crawford, yes, that's correct. Our intent is to develop a site very similar to Durham. We've done some background research of all municipalities that are operating ASE. And we actually, in our opinion, the Durham site is among the best. So we do intend to have a very similar look and feel, some frequently asked questions. There is definitely a need to identify locations. And then I think we will also include information on how future locations may be identified. So if council remembers, this process has taken a little longer than others because we did the first step of developing our community safety zone guidelines. So we have that really strong base that I'm quite proud of. And so, should we want to grow the program or grow the number of community safety zones, we will have that first. We can do that assessment, and then those can be potentially brought into the automated speed enforcement program. And so all of that information we will ensure is accessible and available to the public so they can, make those requests as they see fit.
Excellent, because it's about change behavior, right? Not about
Absolutely.
change behavior. Thank you so much, John. I appreciate the.
No problem.
I think I saw Councillor Lee next. Councillor Lee, are you frozen?
No, I'm good, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Tyler Moore.
Thanks for your report, John. I know it's a lot of work. Did you say December 1 that this would start?
Second or third week. So it's really,
December.
as I noted, it is the key is 90 days from the date of warning signs. So I'm working with operations right now to have those first 3 locations, those signs built.
Okay.
And we should be in place for second or third week of September, which then 90 days from there is second or third week of December.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Anything further on this?
I do, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Collier. Thanks very much for this update, John. I really appreciate the work that you do. Did you, and I missed it, did you mention where those 3 first locations will be?
I did not. The first 3 will be the Delaney Drive location between Church and Ravenscroft, the McGill Drive location between Westney and Coles, and the Williamson Drive location between Warner and Audley. Those 3 were selected as the first 3 locations based on an analysis of the travel characteristics or the road volumes, the number of violators. We saw that they have the highest violations at this point. So in an effort in the road safety vein that this program is based on, we felt it was important they go first, and then we rotate through kind of the remainder of the locations, again based on the characteristics of the road volumes and speeds that we saw. So as I said in my email, I'll give council the update of all the locations, and I can provide the proposed schedule that we've identified. And you'll see that in each rotation, there isn't always one in every ward, but overall, I think we have at this time 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 locations in Ward 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 locations in Ward 2, and 1, 2, 3, 4 locations in Ward 3. So it's relatively balanced. And as I said, regarding kind of community safety zones, there's nothing to say that we won't grow our community safety zones over time where appropriate. And then those locations could become part of automated speed, and then, see cameras deployed there. And as this program grows, we may even see more units. That's something, to be seen. But I will give that full list and that proposed schedule to council in an email update following this meeting.
Okay, yes, I appreciate that. I'll await that report. I actually thought there would be a breakup of 1 camera per ward, but I'll wait for I understand your explanation, and I look forward to that email. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to break it down for myself, John, help me out with this. We have 12 of the speed boards, correct? Which I have seen, and they're very, very pretty, very good looking. And so these are these what you consider the warning boards, that 90 days after you install the actual speed enforcement cameras? Are these the warning boards, or are we talking about the community safety signs? What are we talking about for warning?
No, there's an additional sign. The boards that flash your speed are simply, well, they're two things. They're an educational tool for motorists. You know, you see the speed you're going, but they are also recording data. So the data that is recorded is able to be used by my group in analyzing the traffic patterns. So we're able to see, what does the road operate like before a camera is deployed, while the camera is deployed, and maybe after the camera leaves, what are the changes? Do people go back to, pre-camera speeds, or do they, have a lasting impact? So the recording data is very helpful for my group and for analyzing the program. The warning signs, it is a regulatory sign that says, it's a camera, and it says municipal speed enforcement coming soon. So it's a sign, you've likely seen it on Bailey around the region's automated speed enforcement location there. But it is a sign, it is a road sign that is posted and says municipal speed enforcement coming soon. And that's the one that needs to be posted 90 days at minimum before a camera is deployed at that location.
And this part has been executed already, I take.
It's in process. So as I noted, we're working with operations to have the first 3 locations is our priority right now, get those signed, which lets us start our 90 days and meet, go live in the month of December for the program. And then you will see the coming soon signs deployed at the remaining locations as we are able to procure the signs.
Okay, thanks. And to wrap this up, so we have 3 cameras, and you've done your traffic study over the longest while, and you're using like the top 3 that are in dire need of this enforcement, correct? And then you said you're going to switch it around and move it down as it calms. Is that what the plan is?
Yes. So the intent is, the intent of the program was always to move the cameras around at a set schedule. We're looking at about 8 weeks is our proposed schedule at this point, and we will rotate through all of the locations. The way my group and the way we developed the schedule was we looked at, roads that had the highest number of violators to the lowest number of violators. And that's at least the first year schedule that we're working. So we're working from the roads with the most violators, where we want to have the greatest impact and affect road safety, down to the ones that have the least violators. So that's our first year schedule. There's nothing to say we can't switch it up, go back to another location, after we've rotated once. Or as I said, not to say that there could be another location added before we get through our first year. To get through all 15 locations, as I noted, there's a couple that have 2 camera spots within the one community safety zone. To get through that on our 8-week cycle, we're looking into October of 2022. That would be the first full cycle of every location. And then at that point, as I said, we could simply restart and go back to 1, or we may, target some locations that maybe didn't have the impact we wanted, or that, continue to be issues. At that point, I figure once through the list once, we will maybe have a more targeted approach at, those high violation roads.
Thank you. And, as Councillor Bauer said, I also was under the impression that each ward were going to get their own cameras, and it would only be fair that we, each ward had a camera, because it won't reflect well on our residents, I would think, if, one of the wards don't have a camera in it. It seems it may come over as being underrepresented. So I just thought I'd put that in.
Yeah. So to answer your question, Councillor Khan and Councillor Bauer, if that's the desire of council, we could absolutely switch our schedule to do that. As I said, right now we have an imbalance of locations per ward. So if we went to the 1 camera per ward system, you would get through, for example, all locations in Ward 3 before you would get through all locations in Ward 2 and Ward 1. So you would, it just would be an imbalanced schedule. It's not to say we couldn't do it, and if that's so the desire of council, we can adjust our schedule to do that. But as I said, we took the approach of highest violation road to lowest violation road, regardless of ward, knowing that the rotation is every 8 weeks, and really, if a location isn't in your ward, you go no more than one rotation without a camera.
Thanks, John. This is why you do what you do. You're good at what you do. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything? You're welcome. Anything further? I just will comment a couple things. One, John, I can't stress how much I want those 90-day warning signs installed like tomorrow, because the last thing I want is for this to go another couple weeks, and then it's December 24th when these things go live. I don't think publicly that will be a good timing of this project. So sooner rather than later, we've been going over this for a few years now. So I'd like to get this going as quickly as possible. And just to your last comments, I understand councillors have a want to have it in their own areas. I get that, but my explanation, or the explanation you gave to me and to all of us, is that, and just reiterated, is that this is a matter of safety, and those speed boards that are up right now are going to tell us where we need to focus the resources. And it's not necessarily, and I fully support that, because it is about safety and it is about slowing people down. And these things, there was a article that came out a couple weeks ago in Toronto about Toronto program, I believe, and how well they work and how much they've slowed people down. And I think that's really what we need. So I absolutely support in focusing these where we need them, not necessarily by ward. It will hit all wards at some point, but safety number one. Councillor Bauer?
Thank you, Mayor Collier. You talked about the website, Mr. Grieve, and I'm sorry if I missed when you said that launch will be, because I think as well as the warning signs and the opportunity for residents to be prepared, that website will come in very handy, giving them that information on an ongoing basis. And hopefully it's responsive, that they can also put their comments in or ask their questions. So what's the timing of that?
So the website will be, there'll probably be a few iterations of the website. We will definitely look to have at least a landing page ready for when we post those warning signs, because I agree with you, residents will see those and want to know what they are. So we'll have a landing page and some social media messaging that will coincide with us installing those signage. And then over the next 90 days, probably more so over the next 30 days, we will build out the full version of the website, so that residents can be well aware of what the program is prior to our launch in December. And as I said, in advance of a public open house, or maybe a series of open houses where we present the information to residents that want to know. So I could see us doing as I said, a single event, or maybe a bit of a roadshow at each ward sort of thing, and really let people know what the program is, what it isn't, why we're doing it, where those locations are. I think it's very important that communication is key, and given we have kind of 90 days to roll that out, I think we'll have lots of time to have those events.
Great, thank you.
Anything further? Okay. Moving on to item 4.2, the employment conversion request, CNR 14. There's no presentation on this. The developer, the proponent that put in the conversion request, reached out and asked for a meeting. I had the meeting with them. When we discussed this back in February, I think this is one that we considered, but there was some traffic concerns and council decided not to support this application. Since then, the proponent has done a full traffic study back in May, which I think addressed a lot of the concerns and questions that we just didn't have the answers to. And they asked for if we would consider reconsidering that decision. So I had this put on the agenda so we could have that discussion. I don't know if they met. I know they've met with Councillor Lee, but I don't know if they've met with anybody else yet to have that discussion and update. Okay, I'm seeing Councillor Tyler Moore nodding. So I just wanted to have this on the agenda to see if there's any thoughts or desires from members of council to reconsider. And if we did want to reconsider, I do have an email that I received from the clerk that, let me just find it here. What we passed before was that conversion requests CNR 14 and 28 and 35 not be supported. We would need to have a motion to reconsider, and that motion that we passed would need to be amended to say the conversion request CNR 14 be supported, is what I have here from the clerk. So I'll open it up to council. I can tell you, after reviewing the traffic study and after looking again at the area, I didn't have a problem with it the last time, really, but it didn't have council support. I would be willing to support opening it up, but I want to hear what everybody else has to say. So I saw Councillor Lee's hand first, then Councillor Dyes. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. So I consider myself a bit of a subject matter expert on this plaza. I literally go to it every weekday and most weekends. My kid goes to daycare there, and the lawn goes there for my shopping. So I don't want any council members to take this lightly when I say I fielded one of the first meetings with the proponent after we made our decision, and I heard them out, and then I kept going to the plaza. And so because of that, I'm not convinced that a 13-story, however many story building, however many residents is going to help that intersection. That intersection is a mess on the best of days. And this is only when Rosslyn is 1 lane on each side and Harwood is, I think, it's 2 and 2 right now on that side of Harwood. I can't imagine it getting better with those residents. So they made a case that, with the condos there, you have a supermarket, they won't need to drive as much. Sure. But the minute they do drive somewhere, whether it's to work or anywhere else, then that intersection becomes a huge problem. And I can speak no further than just saying Starbucks. If the Starbucks line gets too long, so there's a Starbucks there, it's a drive-through, and sometimes it goes beyond the actual designated drive-through, goes onto the actual lane where we'll come in, it absolutely stops traffic. Now, over the summer, they had a security guard there to help monitor and direct traffic, but that security guard's not going to always be there. And I get the theory behind it, and I think this may be a decision for council down the line, because I don't think the proponent was interested in building just premium prestige employment there. And so I think they may just kind of sit on this, and this may down the line, once Rosslyn's expanded fully, we can whether it's us or future councils can make that decision of whether now we have a better understanding. But when I spoke to them and they said their traffic studies, their best traffic studies, so they said, they graded from A, I think, to D or F, right? The best case scenario is a B of the traffic in that area, because you have the traffic light on Rosslyn and Harwood, then you have the mini traffic light directing traffic into that plaza, right? Once Rosslyn's expanded in Marilyn was telling me it's 2028, they're expanding it. Like, I don't imagine all that traffic stopping for the intersection and then keep going. Like, I don't think that's going to get better. And the B grade, that's from their traffic studies. Like, these are the people they hire to get kind of the result they want, and the best they got was a B. And I personally don't buy it. I don't see the way we are built out right now with that light there. I don't see how it can possibly accommodate all those people, even if half of them have cars that need to get out of that plaza. That left-hand turn onto Harwood is an impossible, I wouldn't say impossible. It's a very difficult left-hand turn to make because you're so close to the light. Imagine more traffic going. So I thought about it. I honestly was one of the ones at the point where just, I believe I was saying it's a good idea in principle, but the practicality of where all our lights are situated, the flow of traffic, there's no way I could support it the way it is now. So that's just my 2 cents. And thank you, Chair, for letting me speak on this.
Thank you. I did see, I think, Councillor Khan next.
Thank you, Chair. We had Regional Councillor Crawford, Councillor Tyler Moran, and myself had a 2 long meeting with the firm yesterday. And it's Mr. Chair, it's a nightmare. Like, I live there and I go to that plaza and that Starbucks area, it's a rat's nest. You cannot drive in there properly. You can't get in and out as it is right now. They're planning to put up 14 stories and 275 units. With that, and I looked at the plan, when I zoomed in, they're chopping out a ton of actual existing parking spots right now to put that property in. My biggest nightmare with that is thinking, they said it's going to take 3 years to put up that plaza. In the center of Ajax, cranes, pile driving amongst our residents, I don't think so. I cannot support that with a clear conscience. That's all I have to say to that. Thanks.
Councillor Khan, you are aware there's a 14-story building being built across the road, right?
Yes, sir, but there's no traffic. There is no pedestrian
happening.
traffic happening around that. We did have that discussion. There is not a plaza. There's no Booster Juice, Starbucks cars lined up. That's an empty space, secluded, and it's safer than in the center of a plaza in Ajax.
Fair enough. I saw Councillor Tyler Moore next, and Councillor Dice.
Thank you, Your Worship. So when we were at that meeting yesterday with the group, Pierre, I don't want to paraphrase, but the presentation that they were giving to us was that the widening of Roslyn was happening in 2022. And I ironically had asked John Grieve, our manager, I think John is still on now, and gave us the information that the design was coming in 2022, but the widening of that portion that the proponents stated would be in 2022. So, you know, and the term I use, I said, I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but I have to, you know, correct you. In fact, John, can you just speak to that? Because I said to them, I read your report that you gave me, which was very simple. If I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, have John speak to it, but it was 2028, that section, not 2022.
Mr. Green, you able to answer to the timing of the Roslyn Road expansion?
Absolutely. So through you, the Mayor, to Councillor Tyler Moore, yes, you're correct. So as proposed in the long-range capital forecast submission that staff are making kind of as we speak, the design of Roslyn Road between Westney and Lake Ridge Road is proposed for 2022. The construction is then broken down into two segments. The Salem to Lake Ridge segment is 2026, and the Westney to Salem, which is where this location would be captured in, is in 2028. So you are correct that construction of this area is right now proposed for 2028.
Okay, so thank you so much for that. I'm not sure, you know, where they got their information on that. Also, just to be clear for anyone watching, it's 14 stories, 275 units. So, you know, I don't know, an extra 600 people. So with that said, I just wanted to state that for the record, just to sort of factually say where it is. And it was ironic because they presented it to us as we have the solution to, you know, all the problems because it's going to be widened in 2022. But again, I don't mean to paraphrase. The building itself looks exciting, but with all the other challenges. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Dice.
Thank you. Quite simply, I'd just like to know whether the proponent had gone through the planning department with this new request and this study.
Mr. Romowski? Has
Yes,
there been any
thank you.
consult with you?
We had not had any consultation with the proponents. It is a region of Durham planning exercise and process, so we're a commenting agency on that. Furthermore, we didn't meet with any of the conversion requesters through any of the initial discussions leading to our recommendations in February. So to stay consistent with that approach, we did not meet with them. However, I would mention though that a traffic study was not a requirement or part of the criteria for consideration of conversion requests as set out by the region. So nor have we conducted a formal review of the traffic study, nor would the traffic study, or at least in John's quick look at it, have any of our terms of reference or the region's terms of reference that they would have required to put in place in order to properly assemble a traffic analysis.
Thank you. That's interesting.
Anything further, Councillor Tyler Moore?
Thank you, Worship. I hate going twice. Just for clarity for myself. So the proponent needs a conversion, right? They require that because the regional official plan shows that that plaza is an employment area. So is that conversion being asked of this council, or are they asking for an endorsement to get the conversion at the regional level?
They are asking for the same as we did for 4 of the other 15 requests, and that is Ajax Council support the request, and then when they consider it the region, it will come to regional council, and then regional council will, I guess the regional planning department will make recommendations based on that, and I guess they will give some weight to the local
Right.
council support. But if we don't support, I don't know, I haven't had this meeting yet. I'm meeting with them next week to discuss our the ones in Ajax. I'm guessing that the ones that we don't support, they're probably not going to support either, but I don't have that answer.
Okay, because they were asking
But they
for an
would need
approved.
direction from this council. I don't think the region is going to come out and support something if we say we don't support it.
Right, because they said they were asking maybe for us to not so much approve, but support it pending the widening of Roslin Road, which is 2028. Again, I don't mean to speak for them. Thank you so much.
As Mr. Romanowski said, we are a commenting body on this. This is a Region of Durham, and Vision Durham is a Region of Durham exercise. So those
Thank you
of
for
us on
that
regional
clarity, yeah.
council will deal with it there. Anything further from members of council? It doesn't sound like there is, one sec, Marilyn, it doesn't sound like there is a lot of support for this. But I think we probably should just have a vote on whether to reconsider or not, which will, sounds like lose, but at least then we have looked at it. Councillor Crawford?
Thank you. If I could ask through you, your worship, to Director Romanowski, a question and actually clarification on this process. So there's all kinds of reasons, and I understand all the reasons why people don't want this, but at this stage in the game, all they're asking for is to be included in the municipal review, correct? Comprehensive review. Is that basically what they're asking?
Through the chair to Councillor Crawford, they've already made their conversion request. Staff have already considered that through our report that we presented to council back in February, and council's already put their position forward on that recommendation. This proponent's request is coming back to our council for, as Mayor Collier put it, for further consideration, discussion, what have you, to possibly change council's mind, which would then be part of the record going to the region. However, as I stated, the traffic study doesn't change the planning department's position on the recommendations that we put forward. And also, as I stated, traffic study or TIS, or however you want to term it, was not one of the criteria that the region set out for consideration of conversion requests. That's typically something that's done at that more site plan, site development level, and we're not there yet, nor can we consider that, because that use is not a permitted use currently on those lands.
So Jeff, that meeting was like 15 hours long, if I remember right.
It was very long. Yes, that's correct.
Did staff recommend this? I honestly cannot remember.
Staff's position was to maintain the lands as employment lands, to ensure that we're maintaining the employment fabric within this particular parcel and area.
So part of me really wants to support this, because I love the idea of kind of the inclusivity of having people there, and all the amenities are there. I too go through that parking lot and I'm extremely confused by it. So I do understand the regional ward 2 the Ward 2 representatives, because it's crazy in there. And I know I'm just talking and basically saying what everyone else said, so I apologize. But I know, sitting on Vision Zero, that Roslyn and Harwood has been identified as one of the most dangerous intersections on local roads in Ajax. That is a fact. And I realize that if this were to be included in the review, it could be years, could be 15 years down the road before anybody does anything on it. So it's not like it's going to pop up, in the next 5 years, likely. But it's not just Roslyn Road. Harwood is impacted and has been impacted by the Longos Mall for the last 5 years. It has been impacted, and being the reps that are on the other side of Harwood, we do hear it. And we also, the 15-story building that's being built right now it causes many emails to be sent. I guess part of me really wants to, because I love the idea of the inclusivity, but I do understand the concerns of the Ward 2 regional councillors. So I struggle, because I would have thought they would have had better information on the traffic and the widening of Roslyn. And I was a little bit disappointed in that when we had our conversation. But anyway, those are just my comments, not really any questions. But thanks for clearing that up, Jeff.
Thank you. I don't have any other, Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Chair. The regional review that we had, that big long meeting in February, that happens is it every 5 years?
Ish, around every 5 years, they do, that's the MCR process.
Okay, and Roslyn Road in that particular stretch is not expected to be widened until 6 years from now, right? So this proponent could possibly come back in 5-ish years with this same conversion request?
Absolutely. Now I was going to just wrap this up at the end and just to the timeline, and this is why I was willing to bring this forward for discussion, is any projects that are approved through the Envision Durham, this municipal comprehensive review, and Mr. Romanowski, please correct me if I'm wrong,
Sure.
Nothing will happen. No shovels will go in the ground for any of these projects if they're approved and if they're successful for minimum 6 years, because that's how long it takes to get through the regional process, and then it has to go to the province, and then we have to develop, I believe the official plan has to be amended, and then we have to develop bylaws and everything else. So, and even if they accelerate it, which they can do through an official plan amendment, it's 6 years. So if this council doesn't make a decision on this and decides not to reconsider, and they apply next time, it's probably a good 11, 12 years out. So that property could sit vacant like that for 11, 12 years. Is that correct, Mr. Romanowski, from timeline?
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bauer. Yeah, I believe that's kind of the timeline that Mr. McCullough outlined for us through our discussions back in February. By no means is something coming in tomorrow and going to be, construction next week or next year or even 3 years from now. I mean, they have to go through the MCR process, because the MCR process is essentially the region updating their official plan. It'll be subject to the appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and the Ministry of Municipal Affairs has to approve regional official plans. So there's layers of steps that need to go through, that we all need to go through, as well as the local planning authority. So the town has to update their planning instruments, being the official plan, which will be initiated towards the end of the MCR process. So that'll be something that will be starting either by the end of next year or early in 2023. So those all have to catch up with each other in order to actually put the permissions in place that the region would make decisions on through this process. So, I mean, you guys have been on council for quite a bit of time. As much as we'd love to have things go through the planning process in an expeditious manner, it's a long, slow bureaucratic process, and there's lots of layers, and lots of governments change their minds on, you know, green belt and growth plan and all these other things that changed all those layers underneath. So I think if we remember when I think a lot of the regional municipalities started their MCRs, I think the PC government came into play, and then there was a whole change to a bunch of Bill 108 and all these other Planning Act changes and criteria. And that kind of was a stick in the spokes a little bit, but you know, we don't know what other hurdles are going to come down the line. So I think what the mayor's kind of put there as 6 to 8 to 9 or 10 years could be longer, could be shorter. Who knows what the decisions will be made down the road.
Okay, thank you. That's why planning is so exciting. Okay, so then I guess my other question, and forgive me if it's something I should know. So currently it's employment land, and the conversion is to make it residential. Could the proponent also decide to keep it zoned as, like, put something there that would match the zone that it currently is?
No, if we change the zoning, we change the zoning. You can't have residential and commercial. So
Sorry, maybe sorry. If it remains commercial as it currently is, could
Right.
this proponent decide to put something commercial there?
100% through the chair, 100%. They could, I think the original plan for that little block might have been, Bruno's not on the call because he did the site plan, but I think they were thinking of maybe a liquor store. LCBO was going to go there or something like that at some point. It was contemplated originally for like a commercial type of pad building.
Right.
Might even have been a 2-story building, similar to the building that's at the back of the property adjacent to the Longos. It's a 2-story
Oh, yeah,
type
yeah.
of building. They can, zoning's in place. There's a whole list of uses. Pick one and put it there. And you just got to go through the site plan amendment. This process will take them a lot longer to get to their desired goal, as it is employment lands and residential uses are not permitted.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are my questions.
You're welcome.
okay, that ends the speaker list. I'll just comment quickly. I don't have any questions on it. The only reason that I was willing to look at this is a few things. One, when the application first came forward, it lists 1, 3, 5, and 7, which is the whole plaza area, which was an error. It's not the whole plaza area, and I think that was something that my initial thought was, what are they going to do? Tear down Longos and tear down all that stuff and build townhouses? No. But that's not the case. It is just that one vacant parcel. The other is, knowing that it's a fairly long timeline out, at least 6 years or longer out. I'm comfortable that Roslyn Road will be widened by then, and that infrastructure will be in place. I'm, as you all know, very focused on making maximum use of land, vacant land in Ajax, because we don't have very much vacant land in Ajax. And we are going to be all about infill developments going forward. And we know the challenges there. And we know residents don't like change in their neighborhoods very much. But in this case, it's a bit of a different situation because there is not a lot of residential anywhere on that side. So, and the close proximity to the business park seemed like something to look at. If we were to reconsider this, we are not guaranteeing that this is going to be able to go through all those other hurdles. The region could turn it down, the province could turn it down, regional council could turn it down. There's a number of things. All we are doing, if we were to reconsider this, is saying to the region, we support you considering this as part of the Envision Durham process. It's in no way making that final decision. So for those reasons, I see that site as, instead of having one single story pad like an LCBO that maybe employs 10 people, you could have, which doesn't meet our 50 jobs per hectare target. You need to hit at least 30 on there to meet the 50 jobs per hectare target. It's only a 0.6 hectare piece. By having retail, mixed use, and then residential above, it exponentially expands the uses of the space as well as the DCs, property taxes, and creates that pedestrian friendly live work type area on major transit routes, which was why I was willing to look at it. It doesn't sound like there is a lot of support for this. I don't know that it will pass a 5-2 motion to reconsider, but I think I'll move a motion to reconsider to get it on the floor, and I'll need a seconder. And if it doesn't pass a 5-2, at least we've looked at it and decided not to go ahead. So I'll make that motion. Do I have a seconder to get it on the floor, and we'll have the vote? Okay, that motion loses for lack of a seconder. So we will not be, that's the same thing as taking a vote and not getting in the 5-2. So we've dealt with that. Thank you, staff. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Moving on to 4.3, COVID-19 proof of vaccine. Before we open it up to questions, I do have a motion prepared that I'll have the clerk put on the screen, so then we can ask questions to the motion rather than just ask sort of random questions, and because we could be here for a long time if we do that. So Mr. Clerk, do you have that proposed motion with regards to, there we go. I'll move it. I'll need a seconder, and then I'll read it if I get a seconder. And this is to do with having staff look at implementing a vaccine system for town. So seconded by Councillor Lee. So we'll just read it quickly. Let me move this off the side. That the Ontario government be requested to establish a province-wide proof of vaccination system and accompanying protocols for designated discretionary services and activities to avoid further shutdowns and keep the public safe amid a fourth wave of COVID-19. That the town's municipal emergency control group develop and implement a mandatory COVID-19 vaccination policy requiring all town employees to disclose and provide proof of vaccination status based on advice from legal counsel. I understand that advice was coming in yesterday. I haven't seen it yet. That'll be one of my questions to staff. The policy should consider valid, reasonable human rights and medical exemptions. 3, that Ajax Council direct the town municipal emergency control group to work with Durham Region Public Health to consider proof of vaccination protocols for public access to discretionary town programs, services, and activities in the interest of public safety. 4, that all members of Ajax Council disclose and provide proof of vaccination status by September 7th, 2021. I think that's fine to the mayor, or it could be to HR. I'm open to suggestions on that. And 5, that this motion be sent to the Premier and Minister of Health and Rod Phillips and everybody else. And I'll just speak to it quickly, and I'll have to turn the floor over to, I guess, to Councillor Dyes, since both myself and Councillor Lee are on this motion. I wanted to bring this forward. I've been talking about this for quite some time, and we put it on this agenda, and we were waiting for the legal opinion. But seeing that the City of Toronto, City of Mississauga, our immediate neighbors, City of Pickering, have already come out, that just to name a few, with this. I think this is something that is probably going to be pretty standard. And I also understand that the province will probably be bringing out some sort of Vaxport program tomorrow, I understand from the news, but I don't think it hurts to put it into this motion, requesting them to do it, because it just, again, another data point. I look at this, and I know staff have been talking about this and already talking about putting together a passport system or a mandatory proof of vaccination for work. I look at this as we have a responsibility to protect the public. And if public are coming in and dealing with town staff, if public are coming in and dealing with me, I want them to know that, you know, I've taken the right precautions and that I'm looking out for public health. And I think if anybody comes in and meets with any of our frontline town staff, they should have the exact same expectation. The last thing I want is to have somebody come in and deal with our frontline staff or go to the library or go into some programming, and suddenly there is an outbreak or somebody has caught COVID because of a staff member. I think that opens the town up to liability. I think that is absolutely the wrong way to go. I don't know how we would deal with staff that choose or are unable to get vaccinated. That's what the MECG group will do when they're developing the policy. What this is doing is requesting them to develop the policy and also requesting the province. I don't want to see us go through another round of mass shutdowns for our non-essential businesses. I don't think that's fair to the non-essential businesses, especially to the majority, 80%, I believe is the most recent number of people that have got vaccinated. And I don't think those people that have got vaccinated should be limited because they've gone and done what we've asked them to do. So it seems to me, and given all the other places that are coming out with these, that this is the right thing to do. And I think this is a leadership position we must take. So I brought it forward today. Thank you, Councillor Lee, for seconding it. I'll turn it back over to the chair now for any questions or comments. Thank you.
Any questions from members of council? Councillor Moran?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In this wording, I don't see, so everybody's going to say I'm double vaccinated, here's my proof. But on the other side of that, if someone says, because oftentimes I see a component where it says, or a negative result of a test. So if there's an employee that says they don't want to get the vaccine, but they have to get tested. I know some of the hospitals are doing that. Things are tightening up everywhere, but will that be included if somebody says, okay, I don't want to get, but I have a negative test and they have to do it? It seems like it'd be quite cumbersome. We'd have to do it like 2 or 3 times a week and constantly prove that there is. That going to be a component of this? Can anybody speak to that? Or I guess it's not here.
I'll speak to it quickly, Councillor Tyler Moore, and it's my intent that staff will put that together. I'm not supposing that we'll have that at this point. I want MECG group to look at this and put together that policy. And if they come out and say proof of vaccine or testing, no problem. But it has been proven that those companies, those corporations, those businesses so far that have gone that route, it has really increased the vaccination rate. People have decided that the mandatory testing is just too cumbersome
and hassle,
they're just going to get vaccinated. And that is kind of where I want to go, right? That is the intended consequence of this. And if people choose not to, that's fine. That's your right. And it's probably going to be a bit inconvenient. And that's the way it's going to be. But I think that's the way it has to be to protect staff and to protect the public.
By the way, for the record, I'm not suggesting they put that in. I was just asking if that was going to be a component moving forward. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Madam Chair, I should say.
Thank you. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Chair. So, Mayor Collier, did you say that we were waiting for legal counsel and we haven't received it yet?
Yeah, that was one of my questions I was going to put to the staff, because I thought it was supposed to come last Wednesday and then there was a delay and it was supposed to happen on Monday. But at the same time, the CAOs have been having these discussions, and I understand the CAOs, maybe Mr. Baker could speak to this, had a meeting last week. I'm not sure if you were on it because you were on vacation, but I know staff were on it. And then nobody is going to do anything. And an hour later, Pickering announced they were bringing out mandatory vaccines. So these discussions have been ongoing. This is more to formalize it and direct staff to develop. But Mr. Baker, could you speak to that?
Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I will let, I was on vacation, and acting CAO Diane Balatim, as well as Christy McClarty, attended that. So they can speak to the discussions, but it's my understanding, that all of the CAOs agree that there needs to be a policy in place, similar to what you're discussing here today. The question that we are asking our legal counsels is, what happens if somebody refuses? What are our legal restrictions or boundaries as far as what we can do? And all municipalities that have implemented a policy, and we've had conversations with Pickering, I think Christy can speak to that. Even though they're coming out with a policy saying that they have a policy, And it's the same with Toronto recently when Mayor Tory was asked, okay, well, what happens if somebody out and out refuses? And he says, well, then we'll have to figure out how we're going to deal with that. Nobody has secured the legal counsel yet as to, okay, what happens then? And as I think what you were alluding to there, we're hoping that the mere fact that a policy is coming forward would encourage a number of people to get vaccinated who haven't for whatever reason up till now. But I'll let Diane and Christy answer your questions.
Through the chair, I'll go first. It's Christy McClarty, and Diane can fill in some of the blanks. We are waiting on that legal advice from Hicks Morley. We have joined other Durham municipalities as discussed to understand the full impacts of the policy on the workforce. It is a complicated process when you look at, you know, what are those impacts? How does it impact our collective agreements? And obviously we have to respect any human rights and medical obligations as well. So, I mean, this is the point that I think both the mayor and the CAO have made, is that while there has been announcements, and that's great, and I know that behind the scenes we've been working towards a policy, there is no strong framework out there. There's no policy that gets us to the end result as to what happens if someone declines. So we do have to navigate this process a little bit longer. And quite frankly, we had the discussions internally. We know we're moving towards a policy, but let's not just say we're doing it without having the framework in place so that people feel comfortable and they understand the process that will be put in place. So in terms of the legal opinion, we were supposed to receive a summary of the discussion yesterday that Durham Legal was having with Hicks Morley, but we haven't received that as of yet. So I'm sure it'll be forthcoming in the next couple of days. All of the Durham municipalities agree that we need to have a consistent approach on the framework itself. We would all like to be going back to our respective unions with a collective approach that works. I mean, there might be a few made in Ajax changes, but that's the ultimate goal over the next few weeks. Everyone agreed that they'd like to be in a really good position coming out of the long weekend in terms of what does that framework look like. So council should have confidence that we are working towards that. In terms of testing, I will say that Dr. Kyle was on that call, and he made it quite clear that to get to that 90%, testing is not going to do that. That we need strong policy to get that, strong public policy to encourage people to get vaccinated. And that should be reflective in any policy going forward. So generally, he is supportive of policies. Again, like everyone else, is waiting on the legal opinion. But there are a lot of limitations to testing, like you've mentioned, you know, just capacity and the confusion and the resources and expense to do this, who pays, who doesn't pay for this testing. And there's also the portion of, is it legal to ask for the results of these tests? So you've seen recently in the news where people that have announced early around mandatory vaccine policies that they have eliminated the testing portion. I know that a few schools have gone that way. The Ottawa Hospital has recently gone that way. Air Canada has gone that way. They've really removed the option of testing just because there's just too much capacity with it. And Dr. Kyle would agree with that. And also there's a lot of false positives with the testing, and any testing that is positive would require a confirmation test by the region itself. So already there, we've just complicated it even more. So I think I've addressed most of the comments, but I think the most important piece is that people have already seen an increase in voluntarily getting vaccinated just based on the notion of policies coming forward. Diane?
Christie, you've captured it appropriately. I don't have anything further to add.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions from council?
I would just like to ask for a recorded vote, please, Chair.
Okay, can I just make one comment? It might be helpful. I've been listening to CBC radio last week, and there was quite a bit of information with phone-in shows and also speaking with medical officers of health on this whole issue that addresses many of the things that were just discussed. So you might want to Google that and have a listen. I found it very, very helpful, particularly from the legal perspective. So a recorded vote has been called for, Mr. Clerk.
On the motion, in favor or opposed, Mayor Collier,
In favor.
Councillor Bauer,
In favor?
Regional Councillor Crawford,
In favor?
Councillor Khan,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Lee,
In favor?
Councillor Tyler Moran,
In favor?
Chair dies.
In favor. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mayor Collier.
Thank you, Councillor Dyes. Great job. Moving on, just let me pull up the agenda here. On to motions, and I'll have to turn the chair over to Councillor Lee for this motion. Let me just pull up my... There we go. And this is to do, I won't read the whole thing, but moved by myself and second by Councillor Khan. And this is to do with some amendments to the boulevard widening bylaw that we approved. When was that? Late last year. I'll just speak to it very quickly. When we first brought this forward at the start of this term of council, we had, at the time, I think I was told about 250 outstanding complaints, bylaw complaints on private properties. At the same time, we needed to recognize that we don't allow parking on the street, and we needed to somehow facilitate people being able to accommodate more parking on their private property. And so we made these amendments to the boulevard widening and encroachment policy. And I expected that to probably take care of most of the complaints and you know, not require those big of a changes. Some still have to go through the special process, but for the most part, I was hoping that would satisfy a lot. Well, afterwards, and Councillor Khan and I attended one particular street where there's about a dozen complaints all in a row, or enforcement actions all in a row. It didn't address them all. So we've identified a few other areas where there needs to be, in my opinion, some minor tweaks, and I believe staff support these. And it's to do with simple things like river rock, for instance, like the height of tree rings. And by putting a specific, like saying 6 inches, and the bylaw officer goes out there and measures, and maybe it's 7. Do we really need to be that? So by changing that and taking out the 6 inches, for instance, and just saying, like, taking out the height requirement, that allows that little bit of flexibility and judgment on the bylaw officers. Like, is this really a necessary thing? Is it damaging the tree? If it's not damaging the tree, is it really something that's a detriment to public? Or is this something that we can let go? And if we put an actual measurement in there, our bylaw officers don't necessarily have that discretion. But if we loosen it up a little bit, they have that discretion. And that's sort of the spirit of these amendments that we've brought forward, is to just sort of allow that little bit of discretion on behalf of our bylaws officers while they're doing the enforcement. And I'm hoping that this will help clear up a lot of those complaints, because we've been out and looked at them. And in my opinion, these aren't problems. These are, you know, we want people to enjoy their homes. I don't want people to be stressed, receiving letters, getting mad at us, getting mad at the town. And quite honestly, for instance, the River Rock, I think River Rock looks quite nice. I know grass isn't going to grow between 2 driveways this far apart, or so this just loosens it up just a little bit, hopefully to allow these things to be cleared up and move on. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Councillor Khan, for seconding this. And thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Council, I'm just going to turn off my video. Apparently I've been stuttering, so hopefully that'll correct it, but I'm still watching. Councillor Khan, as a seconder, did you want to speak on this motion?
Thank you, Chair. Really appreciate the opportunity. Mr. Mayor, thank you. We went out and we took Cassandra Cruciano with us, and you have all worked extensively on making some amendments to these bylaws, and it will help the residents. I know there was an issue about a liability with the River Rock, and Mayor, thank you. You and Cassandra, you worked on that to get past that, and it allows a lot of opportunity for our residents to really beautify and enjoy their homes, as you said. It's just, it catches us off guard when we implement these rules, and suddenly, as new council, we're not new anymore, but we get the repercussions of when we implement these laws again, and it all comes back, and we were fully prepared for it. Now I think we're a bit more seasoned, and I thank you again, Mr. Mayor, for taking the initiative of bringing out Cassandra and working firsthand on these changes so that our residents can be a lot more comfortable. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Cassandra, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Any other members of council like to speak on this? Regional Councillor Dies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if my memory serves me correct, and staff can help me out here, we had 3 public meetings on this, and it was also posted in the newspaper so that the public knew about those changes. Is that correct?
Through the chair, it's Cass here, to Regional Councillor Dies. One of the, those public meetings were held for the zoning bylaw amendments for driveways on private property, which mirror the changes that were brought forward in the boulevard encroachment policy. So it is kind of two different things that we're talking about. So the driveway widenings and walkways on private property versus what happens on the town-owned boulevards. But there have been, so while we didn't go out to formal public engagement for the boulevard encroachment policy, there was extensive reference to that policy and the changes in the road occupancy bylaw when planning and development services went out with the zoning bylaw amendment.
So that policy, okay, so you're saying there wasn't a specific policy, but I know it was discussed in all of the presentations that I attended.
Yes.
So if this is for considered discretion, how does bylaw deal with that? Because it's going to vary from officer to officer, and then residents are going to get upset that my neighbor got this and they said no to me, and it starts all over again. So to me, it's more confusion. A policy is a policy. And I got to say, Cass, you did a great job on this. It was extremely thorough. And other municipalities are looking at this policy to implement because it was so forward thinking in addressing the issues we all have. So how's bylaw going to work with the discretion to make sure it's fair?
So I think it's Nicole Cooper here. I could just jump in for a minute on that one. I will say that my understanding of the motion that's being brought forward today does not modify the policy in such a way that it would impose sort of a new responsibility on officers to exercise discretion. My understanding of this motion is that it's just making the policy more permissive in some areas, and to the mayor's point, in a manner which will help to bring some of those problematic properties into compliance. But the intent here, in my view, is not to enable officer discretion. I think, my desire and what I think is accomplished by this is establishing just clear policy directives that can be enforced by bylaw enforcement.
And that, I guess, is my confusion, is how do you have a clear policy direction on discretion? So, you have policies for a reason. We can't satisfy everybody. We'd love to, but it's very difficult to do. And I guess that's my concern. My other concern is, with the River Rock, and I understand you're saying it's a small separator between the driveways, but, River Rock is messy. It moves around, it gets kicked about. And it also, after 3 years, I can tell you from my experience with some in the backyard, you have to weed it constantly. So there's all of that to consider. I don't think it's a perfect solution. And, it looks great, like I said, for a little while before you have to start weeding it every summer all the time. And I can't see that happening. With respect to, paving or putting rocks or whatever round trees, well, we've learned from our staff that it kills trees. And you have to be very careful. And while this is a process and a policy that some people may feel is not fair, it does protect the public, particularly with these rains, the intense rains, storms that we are now experiencing through climate change. And it is permeable. The grass is permeable. It soaks up some of that water. When you hard landscape anything on your front property, you have to be very careful because the runoff can flood your basements in your homes and your neighbors' homes. So there's lots of things to consider here. And I really think this policy was very, very well done. And sorry, that wasn't a question, but it's just my opinion as well. So thank you for being patient.
Thank you, Regional Councillor Dias. Councillor Lisa Bauer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this motion. I guess my question is, for 1, A, B, C, and D, by making those changes, I quite frankly don't understand, how does that make this policy better for Ajax? And I just want to understand what those 4 things actually mean. I wish we had that presentation that had the PowerPoint with all the pictures showing us, so that I could see what it was before, and then when the change happened, and now there's a request to make these changes. So could someone please explain each A, B, C, and D, what the impact is?
So through the chair, it's Cass here, so I can take a kick at it, and then I would just ask that my friends in planning or in bylaw kind of chime in as appropriate. So for the first one, so the removal of the 0.3 meter buffer from the side or rear property line. So I'm going to try and explain this in a way that is as in layperson term as possible. So if imagine you're in between your house and you have 2 people that have on your in between your aprons, you have added some interlock across that entire section between 2 aprons. Right now, with the policy requiring a 0.3 meter buffer on either side of the property line, that would require about that's about a foot or 2 feet of grass to run up the middle of that. So we'd be asking folks that had added some interlock in agreement with their neighbor to, permit that kind of additional parking theoretically that we had allowed. We'd be asking them to rip that interlock up or remove that river rock in between their 2 properties. So this would be to avoid, I think the mayor's intention here would be to avoid asking people to make this change when, investments have been made, it's flush with the sidewalk, it's not causing a trip hazard. And Mr. Mayor, is that kind of consistent with what your intention was around that?
Exactly, Cassandra, thank you. In the area that we went and viewed, myself, Councillor Khan, and Cassandra as well, these new developments, okay, this one street where there's about a dozen in a row that all have bylaw complaints against them, the houses are very close together and the lots are not very deep. So the simple fact is that when the front steps come down, they're already at the town lot line. So they're already encroaching on town property the second they step off their front porch. So given this as well, if you only have 2 feet between your driveways and they've interlocked, we would be forcing them to tear out the interlock for what, 15 feet and put in grass or something, or the river rock or whatever's in there, which is permeable, versus just leave it. I mean, we are trying to identify the parking as well. It's there, it looks nice. If you guys go to this street, and I'm not doing this just for this one street, but I'm using this for example, it looks good. This is not a property standards issue. This is almost a bit of a technicality. And I don't want staff to be encumbered with these technicalities, and I don't want residents to feel, well, harassed is the word they've used, but frustrated and feel like they're being targeted. At the same time, one of these houses that has River Rock, for example, has a complaint and is being forced to take it out, but immediately across the road, the other resident has the exact same thing in between the two driveways. But since there's no complaint there, they don't have to take it out. And it's a bit of a silly thing. I want residents to be able to enjoy their property. I think our bylaw staff probably have better things to do than to be worrying about these things. If it's a major thing, no problem. We're still keeping that and identifying that. But these are just, when we do a policy, and Cass, this was great, and it went through our whole process. But like everything, like our parking policy down at the lake, for instance, there's always little areas where we're going to have to do a review and make some minor tweaks. And we're going to be doing that on the parking policy in the fall. This is all I'm suggesting here. This has been running for nearly a year now, and we've had some time to identify a few maybe unintended circumstances or unintended consequences, sorry. And this is just a matter of just tweaking that policy a little bit so everybody can move on, enjoy their property, and bylaw can get on to doing the important work that they do.
So these, thank you for those answers. This information is helpful. So these particular items, does that mean, bottom line, there is more parking made available for people? That's what I'm thinking, is like people are having a hard time. We've all seen it with the new policies about parking, etc. By changing this policy, are we allowing people to have more room on their driveways to park? Is that helping?
Through the chair, that was indeed the original intention of this, across the boulevard and onto private property, to find a way that allowed residents to make alterations to their properties in recognition of the queries that council has received about the need for increased parking opportunities. So to the mayor's point, these changes would be adjustments to the policy that would in some cases, with the removal of the buffer, be able to support that parking in a way, but ultimately these recommendations are to make the policy a little bit more permissive for those that have made changes to their properties for either parking or, in some cases, aesthetic reasons as well.
Oh, okay, thank you. So we're kind of grandfathering without actually calling it grandfathering by making these changes. And my other comment, I guess, would be maximum height requirements for tree rings. I do agree with what Councillor Dye says, that we don't want to damage, so somebody could put something that they believe is beautiful around their tree, but it's maybe not beautiful to everybody else, or it's harmful to the tree.
Through the chair, so the concern with tree rings, and my colleagues in operations can jump in as well if there are any points of clarification, but our understanding through the development of this policy and the updates to the municipal tree bylaw that were brought to council as well a number of months ago was that the distance from the base of the tree of that interlocking or concrete has impacts the amount of water that the tree can actually absorb. So that component of the policy that is that speaks to the health of the tree is going to remain in this policy. So you cannot just put, interlock or pavers right up to the base of your tree. This would just be to the, when the mayor mentioned discretion, it would accomplish where we had put an arbitrary 15 centimeter height of the tree ring. This would just permit those that have, had an extra layer of brick on it or anything like that. This would just remove that. So if it's intended to be a tree ring, it has the appropriate sort of square meterage around the tree. It has the appropriate distance, and we've determined that it's in a good state of repair. It's not creating a health or safety risk. That would just be to avoid having an arbitrary space on it. It just gives a little bit of a clearer, it focuses a little bit more on the intent of the decorative tree ring, I suppose.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd just like to jump in on the question about grandfathering. I'd like to not sort of muddy the waters by talking about grandfathering. That's not really what's happening here. Like grandfathering, that would be akin to like a legal non-conforming scenario, which would suggest that these properties were in compliance under an older regime, but are not compliant under the new rules, and then so they're grandfathered. That's not the scenario here. The properties that we're talking about were not compliant at any point in time. So what's happening here is making the policy more permissive to cause them to now be compliant. Sorry, I hope that's clear.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Cooper. Yes, that's clear. Thank you, Kath, for that. I appreciate the use of the word arbitrary for determining that height requirement in the first place. I think I'm good for now. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. I have Councillor Tyler Moore.
Thank you, Chair. As I always say, just quickly, the word permissible is good. I think the word realistic is good as well. It's 34,000 driveways in Ajax that I often say. It's 34,000, needles in the haystack. So I think this will probably help staff mitigate situations. Although we don't want a free-for-all, want to make sure it's all realistic. But that's why I will be supporting this. Thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Tyler Moore. Would any of the members of council like to speak on this? Regent Councillor Dies.
So are we speaking to the motion then? Just to
Yes.
Okay.
You speaking again? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I think given the fact of what we just heard, that most of these properties were not compliant in any part of the time frame prior or to this policy coming in. So again, it's an issue of not being able to really satisfy everybody's concerns. And again, I think we did over and above the call of duty on this one with all of the open houses that we did. I can't see it being a discretionary issue. I considered the grandfathering in, but again, I mean, I don't do things on my property that I know I need to get permission, or not permission, but guidance from the town. And it's there because it protects people in many different aspects. So I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Councillor Dies. But are there any other members of council? Mayor, to wrap up? Chair to wrap up.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lee. It frustrates me a little bit that, if I drive around town, as Councillor Tyler Moore said, there's 34,000 plus driveways. As I drive around town, I can probably pick a bylaw infraction on more than half of them. Whether it's something a little bit too close to the fence or maybe, and really, unless there's a complaint, we don't enforce it because we want people to enjoy their properties. And these may have been in place for decades and nobody has ever complained about it before. So nobody's ever enforced it before, but once there's a complaint, it has to be enforced. And unfortunately, a lot of times when one house gets a complaint and they get a visit from bylaw, they go, well, what about that guy? What about that guy? What about that guy? And then you end up with a whole street, which Councillor Crawford, you and I have dealt with that on some of those areas. I think Sims was one about issues. I mean, this has happened a lot over the years. And like I've said a few times, I just want people to enjoy their properties. I don't want people to feel like they're being picked on. I don't want people some people never even put this in. They bought a property and it was already done, and now they're being forced to go back and make changes to things that really are often quite expensive. And in the big picture, they really don't cause any issue to public safety or the environment or anything else. It's just simply a matter that we said 6 inches in the bylaw and it's 7. And that's not something that I think we need to be concerning our staff or our residents or us about. And we'll get the calls on it. And more often than not, they'll call me. and I don't want to just pawn it off on the local councillors. I want to find a solution. So what I brought forward here with staff support and recommendation is the solution. I'm not just making this up. This has gone through, again, the process, but I liken this to a fulsome review like we'll be doing to the parking permit system in the fall. There are some other things that have come up and they've been identified, and these little tweaks are just to fix it. I just ask for your support, and I'll leave it there. Thank you. Might as well do a recorded vote, please, Madam Clerk.
Okay, a recorded vote has been requested. No further questions. We'll call on the clerk to call the vote.
Thank you. On the motion, in favor or opposed, Mayor Collier,
In favor.
Councillor Bauer, Councillor
Opposed.
Bauer.
I'm sorry, opposed.
Thank you. Regional Councillor Crawford,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Dyes,
Opposed.
Councillor Khan,
In favor.
Councillor Tyler Morin,
In favor?
Chair Lee.
In favor.
Thank you.
And Chair Lee, you may as well stay in your chair.
I'm seconding. I believe it goes to.
We're going to turn this over to the Councillor Dyes again. My apologies. This should be a fairly quick one. We were approached by the Cities Race to Zero organization, which is a global organization. This is not just national North America. This is global. And it's strictly in regards to things we're already doing, setting our climate change targets and making a declaration to be completely carbon neutral by a certain date. More and more communities are getting on board with this. I'm probably going to be bringing this to Ontario Big City Mayors. And I did talk about this at the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities annual general meeting last week. Councillor Dyes, I think you were in attendance on that as well. Heard me speak to this during one of the delegations there. Just again, easy one, right thing to do. We're already doing it anyway. So we're just signing the pledge and getting on board to support this. I'll just leave it with that. Thank you.
Are there any questions from council? Councillor Lee, you want to speak to that?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So it's thank you, Mayor Collier, for allowing me to second this. To his point, these are things that I'm very proud to say this council's already taken kind of the vanguard, the forward-thinking approach of approving these things already. We've already declared a climate emergency. We've already committed to being net zero down the line, I think 2030, if I'm not mistaken. And then I believe our building standards are coming up sometime within the next year as well to kind of help us get towards those targets. So very happy to support this, looking for council to support this. And like the mayor said, I think it's a no-brainer. So I will actually call for the recorded vote on this vote. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from council? Any comments? Okay, Mr. Clerk, there's been a call for a recorded vote on this.
On the motion, in favor or opposed, Regional Councillor Lee,
In favor.
Councillor Tyler Morin,
In favor?
Mayor Collier,
In favor.
Councillor Bauer,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Crawford, Councillor Khan,
In favor.
Chair Dyes.
In favor. Thank you very much. Mayor Collier, back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Dyes. That carries unanimously. I need a mover and seconder for us to go in camera. Moved by
Mayor, if you don't mind, before we go to closed session, can I just bring up something, if I may? This is actually regards to our September council meeting on the 20th. It's the same day as the election day. And I just thought I'd kind of bring this up before I don't think like see another business section of, is it possible to move that date so it doesn't coincide with the federal election? I'm if I needed a motion to do this or whether.
Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can have that conversation amongst staff and respond to council with any potential changes if necessary.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Chair.
I need a mover and a second. I think I saw Councillor Bauer and seconder, Councillor Tyler Moran. Let me just bring up the agenda. Moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Tyler Moran, that council convene to a closed session pursuant to section 239, paragraph 2B of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended to discuss personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. I don't think we need any discussion on that. Those in favor of going in camera, please raise your hands. I see all hands. That is carried.
Mr. Mayor, we are live again.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I have a motion moved by Councilor Bauer, second by Councilor Tyler Moran, that all directions approved in the closed session be ratified. Those in favor? Any opposed? I don't see any opposed. That carries. The next is the appointment to local boards. I need a mover and a seconder, please, on the bylaw. Moved by Councillor Lee, seconded by Councillor Crawford. That bylaw number 50-2021, being a bylaw to appoint a board of management for the Downtown Ajax BIA, be read a first, second, third time and passed. Any comments? Hearing none, those in favor of the bylaw, please raise your hands. Any opposed? I don't see any opposed. That carries. Moving on to the confirming bylaw. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the confirming bylaw, please? Moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Bauer. That bylaw number 49-2021, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ajax at its special meeting held on August 31st, be read a first, second, and third time and passed. Those in favor of the confirming bylaw? None opposed. I see all hands. That carries. Excuse me. And finally, can I get a mover and a seconder for the adjournment, please? Who haven't I heard from in a while? Councillor Tyler Moran and Councillor Lee. That the August 31st, 2021 special meeting of the Council of the Town of Ajax be adjourned. Those in favor? None opposed. That carries.